Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Today we have Jenny Hollingsworth, and she is going to be presenting to us on simplifying electronic payments in Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2018. And we just ask that if you have any questions at all, please feel free to go ahead and type them into the questions box, and we will get them called out and answered at the end of the webinar. And we do record the webinar and all of our webinars, so if you have to jump off early or if you'd like to listen to it again, you are more than welcome to. It will be available later this week on our website, so you can listen to it again or share it with other colleagues at your leisure. So I will turn the presentation over to Jenny, and she will start the webinar.
Thanks, Angie. Good morning, everyone. As Angie stated, we're going to talk about how to simplify electronic payments in Dynamics 2018 today. And my name is Jenny Hollingsworth, and for those of you who don't know me, I've been a senior application consultant with Innovia for the past almost 13 years or so. And then prior to that, I worked as a NAV application consultant at another partner for about 10 years. So working with NAV, getting close to 25 years now. I feel so old. But I might have seen some of you too, whether you're our customers or not, at the Summit Conference that NAVWG hosts every year. We're there every year. Looking forward to seeing people in October in Arizona, I believe, this year. So today we're going to talk about how to export payment files in NAV. So there is two ways that you can do this. One is using bank data conversion services, and two is using data exchange definitions. And we're going to talk about both of those methods. I do like to tell people what version this different features was introduced in, since not all of you might be on the current version of NAV. So NAV 2013 R2, that's when bank data conversion services was introduced and data exchange definitions. Data exchange definitions was introduced for the payment export. No, I'm sorry, not the payment export. It was introduced for the bank statement import and the positive pay export. NAV 2018, they've added sample payment export data exchange definitions for you to start from. Okay, and we're going to discuss what all of this means in the next slide here. So let's first start with bank data conversion services. What is it? Well, it's a service that provides seamless integration to the banks directly from NAV for both payment exports and bank statement imports. Okay, you'll notice not for positive pay. It's just for the payment exports and your bank statement import. And in order to use this service, you have to sign up with the provider, who is AMC Consult, AS. It's free of charge for one bank account, but monthly fees will apply for additional bank accounts. So one note on this is to make sure your bank is supported, because not all banks are supported through bank data conversion services. And basically what this bank data conversion service does is it has all the file mappings for your bank. So we just have to link up to that service to create, to be able to create those payment exports and bank statement imports. Okay, so there's no file formatting, no programming to put the file format in NAV for your bank. It's all done for you through the bank data conversion services. So for those of you who have not seen this before, who is AMC Consult? Okay, so they're not Microsoft. They're a third-party online banking solution provider, and they're based in Denmark. They've been in this type of industry for over 15 years. And not only do they specialize in bank integration solutions for the Dynamics products, but also other ERP products as well. And this is their website, www.amcbanking.com, in case you'd like to get more information about who they are. There is a few links in there to get to the Dynamics NAV products with more information on the integration with Dynamics NAV specifically. So what if your bank is not supported? What do? Well, you have two options. You can work with AMC to add your bank's format to their service, or you can now map your files manually using NAV's data exchange definitions. Okay, so the bank data conversion services, if your bank's out there, they have all your mappings created for you. If not, we can set those up using data exchange definitions right inside of NAV. Okay, so those are the two different ways we can set up your payment files. So what are data exchange definitions? There's used to set up and format your files from your bank. NAV 2018 now includes 5 sample export formats. And this is great because you can get your format from the bank. You can pick the default format from NAV, and then you can modify it if you need to fit your bank's needs. So it's not a setup from scratch payment file mapping. It's one set up for you, a basic one that you can modify for your bank's needs. Now, for those of you who are on older versions, or maybe you remember the classic version from long ago, payment export was always available, but it was available where a developer had to create a payment export file through code, mapping it to how your bank wants to see it. So it was a lot of development work. So now they've really put it into the hands of the users to do the mapping and get the development and the customization out of it. All right, so we talked about the 2 ways we can set up our payment file, but then how do we do the payment export? So from the NAV payment journal, you can export the file of vendor payments to your bank. Again, like we said, it can be generated from bank data conversion services or a mapped file using data exchange definitions. And then NAV, the current versions of NAV also easily keep track of the payment export history. And then it will allow you to recreate a payment file if or whenever you might need that for some reason. So it creates a history of all those files that you do create and send to your bank. All right, so let's head into NAV now, and we'll take a look at what those setups look like and then how payment exporting works. So let me pull NAV up. And I'm just going to check here if yes, you should be seeing the NAV Role Center right now. All right, so let's first look at the bank data conversion setup. All right, so before we run that payment export, we're going to look at these setups. So first, I'm going to just go up to my search bar and start typing bank data. There is a bank data conversion setup page. It's pretty simple to set up. It'll already have the sign up URL, the service URL, and the support URL for AMC Banking here. So if you click the open in browser icon there, you can go to AMC Banking here and you can set up a username and a password to access your account there. Okay. So the sign-up's really very simple. Up at the top here on the ribbon, the home ribbon, you'll see bank name data conversion list. All right, so I'm just going to select that. This is going to give you a list of all the different banks that it currently works with. Okay, you can highlight and filter on just your country. So if I would filter to just US, I could take a look and see if my bank is out here for the US. One thing to mention when you do look at this, you always want to click update bank name list because they're always adding new banks. So just make sure you update your bank list and then take a look and see if your bank's out here. All right, so that is how you would set up bank data conversion services. Put in your username and password. It's a pretty simple setup. Next, you would want to go to your bank account card. And my transfer bank account is the one I have set up to work with bank data conversion services. So let's look at that card. A few things you need to be aware of for setup purposes. What fields need to be populated on the bank in order to run that bank data conversion service. All right, so the first thing is your bank name. This drops down to all the different banks. You need to select which bank you work with. That's how it's going to know which files to use. You want to make sure your bank account number is populated. And the credit transfer message numbers, it's a number series. It's a number series it uses to create all the payment records. So you need to make sure that number series is populated. All right, if we go down to the posting tab, if you send a remittance to your vendors, you want to make sure the last remittance advice number is populated. I'm just going to populate that right now because it's not. And then finally on the transfer tab, you want to make sure that here, payment export format, when you click this drop down, it's giving you a list of all the data exchange definitions in NAV, and one of them is bank data conversion services. And that's the one you want to select. That's the mapping that NAV has that knows to go to your bank and use that bank's mapping. All right, so those are the few fields that have to be set up on your bank account card to use bank data conversion services. Now, what if you don't want to use bank data conversion services, or your bank is not one that they support? Well, then we would set up our file using data exchange definition. So I'm going to close my bank account card, and I'm going to do a search. I'm going to just look for data exchange, pull up data exchange definitions. Okay, here are all the default definitions that come with NAV. You'll see here the new ones added. Right here are the 3 US default EFT payment exports added. There's one for Canada, and then there's one for Mexico. So those are the five EFT payment exports added with generic file mappings. So any one of these then can be used as a starting point for your bank's requirements. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to show you this US EFT default definition. So I'm going to highlight it and click Edit. And let's just generically go through what's here. What does this tell us? So the General Fast tab, it's telling me that it's a fixed text file. So you notice options are MXL, variable, or fixed. The type is an EFT payment export. The file encoding, this one is Windows. And what is my column separator? In this one, it's going to be a comma delimited file. So here's some just basic information about my file. The next tab here is the line definitions. And this is where we would build the file layout. So here you can see, is there a header line? Is there a detail line? Is there a footer line? This specific file, it looks like there's one detail line, there's a batch footer and a file footer, and then a file header and a batch header. So this is the different type of line definitions that are in the specific file. So on the detail line, how do I tell it what fields need to be displayed on the detail line? Well, I would highlight the detail line. You can see it's counting here that there's 12 columns, 12 fields in this detail line. And I would click the field mapping button. Let me just expand this here for you guys. Okay, so here are the 12 different columns in the correct order that need to appear in my detail line of my payment file. Just real quick, you can see there's record type. Here you see our vendor routing number, the bank account number, the payment amount, the vendor name. So all of the information that would need to appear in that detail line is set up here. Okay, so we would give it a column number, a caption, and then we would map it to a field within NAV. All right, I'm not going to go into a lot of details on how to set up these data exchange definitions, but I want to give you an overview of what they look like and kind of how they work. All right. So next, with data exchange definitions, just like we did, we had to set up the bank account card with the data, bank data conversion service fields. Well, in this instance, let's go back to the bank account card. I'm going to go to a different bank account and show you how to set up what fields need to be populated for if you're using data exchange definitions. So I have a new bank set up here called US Bank. All right, the first thing on the general tab, again, your bank account number must be populated. On the posting tab, we're going to be sending remittance advices to our vendor. You need a last remittance advice number. On the transfer tab, you need to make sure you tell it the country export format. So is it US, Canada, Mexico, or other? So I have mine populated with US. You need to give it a file name. So you always have to have a numeric number within that file name because every time you create an export file, it will increment that number. Your transit number must be populated. And again, transit number is your routing number, your bank routing number. And then here under payment export format, okay, instead of selecting that bank data conversion format, we're going to select whichever format that we decided we were going to start from in the data exchange definitions. So I'm using the US EFT default format. All right. Okay, so we've reviewed both methods of file creation. And I feel like I keep repeating this, but I just like to make sure everyone understands 2 ways to create your file format. 1, bank data conversion services. 2, mapping it manually through data exchange definitions. All right, so for our next part, I'm going to show you how to actually process the payments. I'm going to be using my US bank. I'm going to be using the payment export format of my data exchange definition that we had set up. All right, I'm going to close my bank account. And we've set up our company side of things, right? Our internal bank account, our file format, our bank needs. But what about what setup needs to be done on the vendor itself to allow them to use or allow us to use EFT exports on the vendor? So let's just look at a vendor card. I'm going to go to my vendor list here, and I'm going to just type a quick filter on 2 vendors I'm using for this demonstration. And let's look at my UPS vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and view that card. What needs to be set up on a vendor in order to use payment export? Okay. Number 1, the payment method. I've set that up as EFT. So I know that they are an EFT payment. And then number 2, the preferred bank account code. Okay, so we need to, I'm going to just click the drop down arrow. I only have 1 bank account for this vendor, so I'm going to go ahead and just click advanced to open up my bank account list. We need to set up the vendor's bank account in our system. Okay, so if I click edit here, I need to say this vendor uses US Bank. This is their routing number. This is their bank account number. Okay, we need this information to tell our bank where to take the money from. In order to use it in the payment journal for electronic payments, you need to check mark use for electronic payments, or you will get an error in the payment journal if you try to export the file. Okay, so pretty simple setup. If they only have one bank account, great. You still do have to populate their preferred bank account because that will default in the payment journal when you do the exporting. If not, and they have multiple bank accounts, you'll have to select it manually. So make sure you set up that preferred bank account for the payment export. All right, that's really it for the vendor setup. Payment method code and preferred bank account with their bank information. All right, now that the vendors are set up, let's head over to the payment journal. I'm gonna go back to my role center and my payment journal's on my ribbon. On the payment journal batch I'm going to be using is the general payment batch. Now you'll notice I have this set up, and this is important too. It's going to use my US bank, and it's set up here to allow for payment export, so it's check marked. If whatever journal batch you're going to be doing payment exports out of, you need to make sure allow payment export is check marked. So I'm going to go into edit journal, and if you're using NAV, you know the normal function is suggest vendor payments. If you are printing checks, it's the same for electronic payments. Populating the journal would be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and suggest vendor payments. And I'm going to say everything through February 1st of 2019. Filled in my bank account from my journal batch. And my bank type here is now, it's not a check, it's an electronic payment. I'm just going to filter on 2 vendors that I'm going to use for this demonstration instead of a whole bunch of vendors. So I'm going to use my UPS and FedEx vendors and click OK. So the journal will be populated. All right, so this is every invoice that I need to pay to my UPS and FedEx vendors. Now, just like normal NAV in your payment journal, you can delete lines if you're not going to pay them. You can change the amount on lines if you're not going to pay the full amount for that invoice. You can add lines. So it's just like normal NAV at this point, okay? So once you have your payment journal set up to where you want it to be and what you're going to pay, the next step is, and for those of you who maybe are using payments in earlier versions, the steps have changed a little bit in 2018 from those prior versions. So the next step here is we would click the export button, and that export button would create your file or files of remittance advices that you're going to send to your vendor. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click export. It's going to ask me again my bank account. And here's my output options for the remittance advice. I can print it. If I'm not sending the remittance advices, I can just preview it. I can PDF it. I can create a Word doc. I can use XML, which are for the different report layouts. But most importantly, I can now email it in the later versions. So on the vendor card, if you go to document layouts, you'll see an option for remittance advice. And there you can put in your remittance advice report and the email addresses that it needs to be sent to. And then this will email those remittance advices right out to your vendors. For now, I'm gonna just send this to PDF. I don't wanna print it. So if you are sending it to a folder, you have to select which folder to save it to. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that to my test folder. And we'll give that just a minute because I have a few lines here. Okay. Now, on export here of the payment advice, it will notify you of errors. And you'll see those errors over here in the fact box. Okay. So if a line has an error, you cannot then create the export file to the bank. That error has to be fixed. All right. All right. So it looks like it created my remittance advices, and I'm just going to check real quick. Okay, so here you see it created one for FedEx and one for UPS. I'm just going to double click and open that UPS file just to kind of give you an idea. This is just a base report, of course. Remittance advices, you could also use NAV's Microsoft Word documents to create your own design of how your remittance advice should look. Looks like my Acrobat does not want to open here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here you can see there's 8 pages of remittance advices to UPS. Now, this is because I have, I don't have one line per check in my payment journal. When you suggest vendor payments, you can summarize per vendor where it would create one line per vendor. And if you did that, it should show UPS with all the invoices instead of looking like a separate remittance advice for each invoice. All right, so that is my remittance. Older versions, the next step you would do would be to create your export file. New NAV 2018, no more. You would post your journal first. So I'm going to commit my journal by posting it. And then I'm going to create my file to the bank. All right, to create my file to the bank, I'm going to click on the Navigate tab, and there is a button called Generate EFT Files. I'm going to go ahead and select that. All right, here it's US Bank. This is going to be my settlement date with the bank. I think I was out in the future, right? So I'm going to select 02/01/19. And now here you can see it's automatically going to include all those records from that payment journal I just posted. You don't have to generate an EFT file per payment journal posted anymore. You don't have to export that first before you post. So if you have a few different payment journal batches running that day that will be sending EFT files to the vendors, you can accumulate all those here and then send the file once at the end of the day, or once at the end of the week, or whatever you prefer. But this new method allows it to accumulate and then stay here until you actually export that file to the bank. So you can see everything's automatically checked and marked because you can choose to only send certain ones to the bank, your choice. Next step, we want to actually create the file. So we're going to click Generate EFT File. It's going to ask you where to save that file. And now you can see it's actually being generated. Once the file is generated, those payments no longer exist here. So let me go back, and this is my new file. Let's open that in Notepad. Okay, so you can see now I don't remember where I saved that. This is my last test. Okay, it doesn't matter. It creates a file similar to this. So it's gonna have a structure that matches the structure of the file setup that you did through bank data conversion or data exchange definitions. All right. Now, let's say you want to go back and look at that file in NAV, or you need to re-export that file for some reason, okay? You can do that by going to the payment export file history, which is under, oops. Did I get it right the first time here? Credit. credit transfer registers. Okay, so credit transfer registers is going to show you your file that you've created. You can see I've been doing a lot of testing, and I've canceled a lot of files as well. So I'm not going to try and re-export this, but if it was actually a file that was created, I could view the entries. I could re-export the payments to a file. So I do have a few different options here. So again, after the fact, you can still re-export that payment to a file. The entries aren't no longer existing. The file can always get recreated. All right, I know we covered a lot. So I guess now I will hand it back over to Angie and see if we have any questions.
At this time, we do not have any, but we do ask that you do type them into the questions box so we can get them called out. So while you're taking a few moments to do that, I will briefly go over a couple of items that I wanted to address. Like I said, this is being recorded, so it will be available on our website later this week for you to view again, or if you want to share with other colleagues, you're more than welcome to. And we do have some more webinars coming up. We have one tomorrow. Experlogic will be hosting their webinar on delivering complex quotes in seconds with Experlogic CPQ. And then we have a couple next week. Dynamics eShop, they will be hosting a webinar on integrating e-commerce for NAV and D365. And we have Steve Waltz from Innovia. He will be doing a webinar on coaching. So if you're interested in this topic, it's about not reaching your sales quotas. Try using sales coaching to get you there. So we encourage you to look over these events and any of our other events on our website and register for them. They are free, and you can invite anyone that is interested as well. And also check out our conference page. We are having our customer conference in Chula Vista Resort in the Wisconsin Dells coming up April 18th and 19th. That is a free event for you to attend, and today is the last day for free hotel stay. So if you are interested in that, please register for that. Okay, Jenny, I believe we have some questions, so let me get those up. What parts of this were specific to 2018, and would you recommend an upgrade from 2017 prior to going to electronic payments?
All right, good question. I'm just going to pull NAV up again. So bank data conversion services, checking to see if your bank is out there, that is available in 2017. Data exchange definitions, where you would map your own files, also available in 2017. What's not available is they don't have the sample mappings for all the US, where you can start from those sample mappings. However, I have obviously not tried this, but those mappings you can export. So we could always try exporting those mappings out of a Kronos 2018 database and then importing them into your 2017 database and seeing if they export correctly. I would assume they would, because I don't think the data structure of data exchange definitions has changed, but I don't know for sure. So that's always a test we could try out, an easy one. So both file formats are available for 2017. In the payment journal, your vendor setup is exactly the same. Your payment batch setup here, exactly the same. The only difference in 2018 is, let me get back to a journal, okay? Suggest vendor payments, you populate your journal. That's the same in all the versions, okay? But it's the actual exporting the electronic payments file that's different. You would export the electronic payments file and create that file before it allows you to post the journal. So the whole generate EFT files is where it opens up to a new screen and allows you to accumulate multiple payment journals and send them all at once. That is not available. You would just have to export and create a payment file for what's in your journal currently, and then post the journal. So just the way it works with that generate EFT files, doing it after posting and allowing the accumulation is what's different for 2018. Hopefully that helps answer that question.
Okay, that sounds good, Jenny. Any other questions? I'll give a few moments. Yes, another one has come through. We only have usage equals purchase order available in our vendor document layouts. How will we send remittance?
That is a good question too. I'd have to look back at 2017. 2018 has the remittance option available, so therefore that maybe that is another change to 2018 as well. So I can check on that question.
Okay, I'll give you his information.
For 2017, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions to come through? Please do so. All right, well, if there are no other questions, again, thank you, Jenny, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending. We look forward to seeing you on one of our next events, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.